My own daughter, Chloe, dropped off her baby, Leo, promising 6 months while she and Mark pursued a business opportunity. 6 months became silence, leaving me to barely scrape by for his formula. But a mother's love in a grandmother's fight runs deeper than any lie. When the truth finally broke, my daughter didn't know what hit her. This is my story. Like, share, and let me know where you're listening from. The knock on the door had been a surprise, a sudden intrusion into the quiet Tuesday afternoon that Eleanor had been planning to spend tackling a mountain of laundry. It was Chloe, her daughter, standing on the porch, a large suitcase at her feet, and cradled in her arms 8-month-old Leo, looking tiny and bewildered. "Mom, can we talk?" Chloe had begun, her voice a little too bright, a little too hurried. Eleanor had instinctively stepped aside, her gaze drawn immediately to Leo, whose wide, innocent eyes peered over Chloe's shoulder. Chloe spun a story that felt rehearsed, polished, almost too good to be true. Mark, her husband, had apparently landed a fantastic business opportunity in Europe. A temporary posting, she'd assured Eleanor, for 6 months, a chance at an incredible salary that would not only clear their mounting debts, but set them up for life. She'd even promised to repay all of Eleanor's past loans, the college tuition, the down payment on her first apartment, the endless small emergencies. Her words tumbled out, confident and unhesitating, painting a dazzling picture of a brighter future. Eleanor's heart had twisted in her chest as she watched Leo. He was clinging to Chloe, his tiny fingers fisted in her shirt, a deep, primal attachment evident in every soft sigh and innocent glance. "Why can't you take him?" Eleanor had asked, the question escaping her lips before she could censor it. The thought of separating this baby from his mother, even for a few months, felt wrong, a tearing at the fabric of nature. Chloe had dismissed the idea with a wave of her hand, a practiced, almost dismissive gesture. "Oh, Mom, you know how these corporate housing situations are. Not suitable for a baby, too much travel, constantly moving. It wouldn't be fair to Leo. We'll send for him once we're settled, really." The words felt hollow, a flimsy excuse that did little to ease Eleanor's growing discomfort. Eleanor knew her own life was a delicate balancing act, a constant struggle against an encroaching tide of bills and responsibilities. She worked 2 jobs, one as a waitress at the local diner, the other cleaning offices in the evenings, just to make ends meet. Her arthritis medication was expensive, a necessary cost to keep her moving, to keep her working. And the heating bills, already climbing with the chill of autumn, threatened to plunge her deeper into the red. She tried to explain her predicament, her voice tinged with a weariness she couldn't hide. "Chloe, you know my situation. 2 jobs barely cover my expenses as it is. My medication alone is—" But Chloe had cut her off, her smile faltering for a moment, replaced by a slight frown. "Mom, you raised me fine, remember? All by yourself. Leo's an easy baby, honestly. He mostly sleeps and eats. And I told you, we'll send money next month. Lots of it. You won't have to worry about anything anymore. Think of it as an investment." The words, meant to reassure, sounded almost like a subtle manipulation, a reminder of past sacrifices used as leverage for another. Eleanor looked down at Leo again. He was in his stroller now, a soft, fuzzy blanket tucked around him. His gaze met hers and a small, tentative hand reached out, grasping one of her fingers with surprising strength. In that moment, the exhaustion, the financial worries, the gnawing doubt about Chloe's grand promises faded. All she saw was the innocent vulnerability of her grandson, trusting and small. It was an unspoken plea, one she couldn't refuse. 6 months, Eleanor had finally said, her voice heavy with reluctance. "And I want to call every single day. No excuses." Chloe had agreed readily, a triumphant gleam in her eyes, promising daily video calls and constant updates. 3 months later, the calls had dwindled to sporadic texts, then to a complete, chilling silence. Eleanor's initial concern had morphed into a crushing realization, a heavy weight in her chest that told her the truth she had subconsciously feared. Chloe's business opportunity, in the just for 6 months, had been nothing more than a carefully constructed lie, a betrayal that left Eleanor reeling. She was not just caring for Leo, she had been abandoned with him. The anger was a slow burn beneath the surface, but for now it was overshadowed by a primal fear. Her worst fears materialized one blustery afternoon at the grocery store. With Leo fussing loudly in the cart, his small cries intensifying with each passing aisle, Eleanor clutched the last $12 she had to her name. The formula, a large container, cost $18. She stared at the price tag, then at the meager bills in her hand, a flush of humiliation rising to her cheeks. Leo's wails grew louder, piercing the fluorescent-lit aisles. "Everything all right, dear?" A kind voice broke through her frantic thoughts. It was Emily, a young woman who worked at the store, her uniform neat, her eyes sympathetic. Emily had a genuine warmth about her. "Sounds like he's hungry. Formula's gotten so expensive, hasn't it?" She shared a brief, knowing glance, a silent acknowledgement of life's struggles. "I remember when my little one was that age, times were tough. We almost went without once or twice." Eleanor felt a sudden urge to confide, to pour out her heart, but her pride, stubborn and unyielding, held her back. I'll figure something out," she managed, her voice barely a whisper, the lie tasting bitter on her tongue. She left the store empty-handed, the relentless wails of Leo echoing in the vast, indifferent parking lot. The shame was a physical ache. As soon as she got into her old sedan, she dialed Chloe's number, her thumb trembling. It went straight to voicemail. Again and again. The automated message, cold and impersonal, was a stark reminder of her daughter's absence, her callous disregard. That night, in the quiet of her small kitchen, Eleanor measured out the last meager scoop of formula. It wouldn't be enough. She added water, diluting it, knowing it wasn't ideal, but it was all she had. Leo, still hungry, accepted it without complaint, but the small portion only offered a temporary reprieve. As she watched him drift off to sleep, a desperate resolve hardened in her heart. There was only one person she could turn to, one last resort. Swallowing the bitter pill of her pride, Eleanor decided she would ask her neighbor, Mrs. Lee, for a loan first thing in the morning. The dim glow of her phone screen was a harsh spotlight on Eleanor's trembling hands. Leo was finally asleep, a small innocent bundle in his crib, but his lingering hunger pangs echoed in her own empty stomach. It was almost midnight, and the silence of the house pressed in, amplifying the shame that clawed at her. She had tried to avoid this, to figure something out, as she'd told Emily at the grocery store. But pride, she now knew, was a luxury she could no longer afford. Her arthritic fingers, swollen and stiff, moved slowly over the keypad, each tap a painful admission of defeat. She typed out the message to Mrs. Lee, her neighbor, her words carefully chosen to sound apologetic, humble, desperate. "Mrs. Lee, I am so sorry to bother you so late. I desperately need $40 for Leo's formula. I'll pay you back on the 1st of next month, I promise." The words felt heavy, each one a testament to her failure at 63, a grandmother who couldn't even feed her grandson. She hesitated, her thumb hovering over the send button, a wave of hot shame washing over her. Then, with a deep breath that hitched in her throat, she pressed it. Almost instantly, a reply popped up. Eleanor's brow furrowed. The response wasn't what she expected from Mrs. Lee, who typically communicated in short, practical sentences, often with a slight formality. This message was bold, confident, distinctly American in its idiom. "You are a warrior woman." Before Eleanor could even process the strange reply, another notification flashed on her screen, this one from her banking app. A deposit. Eleanor blinked, then squinted, thinking her tired eyes were playing tricks on her. The amount staring back at her was $10,000, her breath caught. $10,000. It had to be a hallucination, a cruel trick of her exhausted mind. Her hands began to shake uncontrollably, rattling the phone against her ear. She scrolled back to the text message, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She needed to verify the number. With growing horror, Eleanor realized her mistake. In her desperation, her fumbling fingers had typed one digit wrong. She hadn't sent the text to Mrs. Lee. She had sent her humiliating plea for $40 to a complete stranger. Panic, cold and sharp, seized her. $10,000. This couldn't be real. It had to be a scam, a trap. What kind of person sends that much money to a stranger? What kind of dangerous strings might be attached? She imagined shadowy figures, impossible demands, her life spiraling into something even worse than financial destitution. Driven by a sudden, urgent need to undo the mistake, to make it all disappear, Eleanor called the number back. Her voice was a barely audible whisper, thick with fear and exhaustion. "Hello, I think I made a mistake," she stammered, the words catching in her throat. "I sent you a text and then there was money. I didn't mean to. I don't want it. Please, I need you to know it was a mistake." She didn't wait for a reply, simply hung up, her heart still hammering. The next morning, still consumed by anxiety, Eleanor made the dreaded call to her bank. She explained the bizarre situation, her voice laced with trepidation. The bank representative was surprisingly calm. After a few minutes on hold, the woman returned to confirm what Eleanor already knew, yet still couldn't quite believe. "Ms. Vance, the transfer is legitimate. It's a wire transfer from a verified account. We can't disclose the sender's details due to privacy laws, but there's nothing fraudulent about the transaction on our end." The news, meant to reassure, only deepened the mystery, casting a long, unsettling shadow over the unexpected windfall. A legitimate wire transfer from an unknown account. Who was this person? And why her? That night, Eleanor lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, Leo's soft breathing, the only sound in the quiet room. The money was real, $10,000. It was enough to cover formula for months, to pay the heating bills, to buy her expensive medication without having to choose between her own health and Leo's needs. A spark of hope, faint but undeniable, ignited in her chest. But with that hope came a chilling awareness. Whoever sent the money knew who she was. They knew her name, her bank account details. They had seen her desperate plea. The thought was unsettling, even a little terrifying. The following morning, as Eleanor sat nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee, the doorbell rang. A delivery man stood on her porch, holding a large, elegant box. "Eleanor Vance?" he asked, his voice brisk. She signed for it, her mind still reeling from the events of the previous day, her heart fluttering with a new kind of anxiety. Inside the box, nestled amongst layers of tissue paper, were wonders. Beautiful, organic baby clothes, soft and impossibly perfect, far beyond anything Eleanor could have afforded. And then, at the bottom, a treasure trove of formula, months' worth, the exact brand Leo needed, expensive and abundant. Eleanor felt a surge of relief, so potent it almost brought her to her knees. This was salvation. Beneath the formula, a small, plain white envelope lay waiting. Her hand, still a little shaky, opened it. Inside was a single card, crisp and stark. The message, written in elegant script, sent a shiver down Eleanor's spine. "For the warrior who fights alone, you are seen. You are valued. Do not look for me." Eleanor dropped the card as if it had burned her. The words, so affirming, were also profoundly chilling. You are seen. It was surveillance, an admission that she was being watched, that her desperate circumstances were known to an unseen benefactor. The implications were terrifying. Who was this person? A guardian angel? Or something far more sinister? Yet, as she looked at Leo stirring softly in his crib, a small, contented sigh escaping his lips, Eleanor knew deep in her weary heart that she couldn't refuse these desperately needed gifts, no matter how unsettling their origin. The mysterious gifts kept arriving, a steady stream of luxury that both alleviated Eleanor's burdens and heightened her unease. Every few days, another elegant package would appear on her doorstep, often before she even realized she needed its contents. There were brightly colored educational toys that stimulated Leo's rapidly developing mind, jars of organic baby food in flavors Eleanor had never even seen, and then a truly astonishing delivery, a state-of-the-art stroller, sleek and ergonomic, with smooth gliding wheels and a canopy that promised full sun protection. It was the kind of stroller she'd seen other mothers pushing in wealthier neighborhoods, a silent symbol of affluence she could never have dreamed of affording. Each package came with a small, neatly written note, always with the same unsettling message. "For the warrior's little prince," one read, accompanying a box of designer baby shoes. Another, tucked amongst a selection of premium diapers, simply stated, "He deserves the best." The words were meant to be comforting, affirming, but to Eleanor they were increasingly unnerving. They hinted at a constant observation, a watchful presence that knew her financial struggles, knew Leo's needs, and perhaps even knew the hidden anxieties that gnawed at her. She felt like an exhibit in an unseen watcher's private museum. The sudden influx of fancy stuff did not go unnoticed in her quiet, close-knit neighborhood. Whispers started, subtle at first, then growing louder, more pointed. Mrs. Albright, who lived 2 houses down and considered herself the unofficial neighborhood watch, would eye Eleanor's packages with thinly veiled suspicion. My, Eleanor, where's all this come from? She'd ask, her voice dripping with insinuation, implying something illicit, something not quite right. Must be some mighty generous family money suddenly coming your way. The comment stung, painting Eleanor as either a recipient of charity or worse, someone involved in shady dealings. The judgmental glances followed Eleanor to the park. The luxurious stroller, once a source of comfort, became a beacon for unwanted attention. Other mothers, usually friendly and chatty, now offered backhanded compliments. "That's quite the ride Leo's got there," one woman remarked, her tone laced with sarcasm. "I suppose you finally tapped into that trust fund, Eleanor?" Another simply offered a tight, knowing smile, leaving Eleanor to feel exposed, scrutinized, and profoundly alone in her bewildering situation. That afternoon, after a particularly uncomfortable encounter at the park, Eleanor finally managed to reach Chloe. The phone rang for what felt like an eternity before Chloe's bright, carefree voice answered, background noise of distant music and laughter filtering through the line. "Mom, so good to hear from you. Everything okay?" Eleanor's voice was tinged with a bitterness she no longer tried to hide. "Everything is far from okay, Chloe. When are you coming back for Leo? It's been months." There was a brief silence on Chloe's end, then a sigh that sounded almost annoyed. "Oh, Mom, about that. Mark's assignment, well, it's permanent now. They've offered him a long-term contract." The words hit Eleanor like a physical blow. Permanent. It meant the 6 months had been a complete fabrication. The betrayal was raw and sharp. "Permanent," Eleanor echoed, her voice rising. "What about Leo? What about your son?" Chloe's tone shifted, becoming saccharine sweet, laced with a subtle manipulation that Eleanor knew all too well. "Well, that's just it, Mom. You've been doing such a wonderful job with him. Remember how worried you always were about my parenting when he was tiny? You said I was too flighty. He's thriving with you. Maybe he should just stay put with you. It's what's best for him, don't you think?" Eleanor felt a wave of nausea. The brazenness of it, twisting her own past anxieties and maternal worries into an excuse for abandonment, sickened her. "No, Chloe, no, I don't think that. This isn't fair to me, and it's certainly not fair to Leo. If he's staying, then you need to provide financial support. Real support, not just promises." Chloe's cheerful demeanor immediately deflated. "Oh, Mom, you know how tight things are right now. We just moved into a new apartment, all these setup costs. I promise next month, okay? We'll send something significant." Next month? The empty refrain echoed in Eleanor's mind, a cruel reminder of every broken promise, every letdown. The line clicked, and Chloe was gone, leaving Eleanor heartbroken and defeated, clutching a dead phone to her ear. Later that evening, the unsettling feeling of being watched intensified. As Eleanor drew the curtains, she spotted it, a sleek black sedan, its windows heavily tinted, parked directly across the street, blending almost perfectly with the deepening shadows. It hadn't been there earlier. Her heart lurched. Coincidence? Or was her benefactor, or perhaps something more sinister, making their presence known in a more direct, intimidating way? Driven by a surge of fear, Eleanor called the non-emergency police line. She explained her concerns, the mysterious packages, the unexplained money, and now the ominous car. The officer who responded was young, barely out of the academy, and clearly unimpressed. He listened politely enough, but a faint smile played on his lips. "Mrs. Vance, with all due respect, it sounds like you've got a secret admirer, not a stalker. Package, money, someone looking out for you. Happens sometimes. As for the car, it's a public street. Anyone can park there." He chuckled, a dismissive sound that did little to ease Eleanor's anxiety. "Unless they're breaking any laws, there's not much we can do." Eleanor spent the rest of the night in a state of heightened alert, double-checking every lock, peering through the curtains at shadows that shifted with the breeze. Her anxiety was palpable. affecting even Leo, who cried fitfully in his crib, sensing the tension in his grandmother. The unexpected gifts, once a beacon of hope, now felt like a heavy chain, binding her to an unknown, watchful entity. The morning light, usually a comforting presence, felt stark and revealing. Eleanor had barely slept, her mind a tangled knot of fear and unanswered questions. Another package awaited her on the porch, smaller this time, almost delicate. Her hands, still trembling slightly, tore at the wrapping. Inside lay a small velvet box. She opened it to find a sterling silver locket, intricately carved, a piece of jewelry far too elegant for her worn hands. A strange warmth spread through her as she held the locket, a momentary lull in her anxiety. But then she opened it, and her breath hitched. Inside, perfectly fitted, was a tiny photograph. It was of her and Leo laughing, their faces bright with genuine joy. The memory immediately came back to her. A sunny afternoon at the park, Leo giggling as she tickled his chin. A rare moment of pure, unadulterated happiness. The photo was candid, unposed, captured without her knowledge or consent. A chill ran down Eleanor's spine, far colder than the silver locket. The accompanying note, tucked neatly beneath the jewelry, confirmed her deepest fear. Every warrior needs a talisman. You are not as alone as you think. This person wasn't just observing her from afar. They were intimately embedded in her life, documenting her private moments, cataloging her vulnerabilities. The generosity, once a lifeline, now felt like a gilded cage. Her first instinct was to dial 911. Her hand reached for her phone, hovering over the emergency contact. But what would she say? Someone is being incredibly generous with me, providing for my grandson, but also watching me and sending me pictures of myself without my permission? It sounded insane, irrational. How could she report being threatened by generosity and surveillance that, on the surface, seemed benevolent? The police officer's dismissive chuckle from the previous night echoed in her ears. He would think she was delusional. Instead, Eleanor sank onto the edge of her sofa, pulling Leo into her arms. She held him close, burying her face in his soft hair, inhaling the innocent scent of baby lotion. Her lips moved silently, forming a prayer, a desperate plea for understanding and protection from this unseen, unknown force that had so insidiously woven itself into the fabric of her life. Later that afternoon, as Eleanor was trying to coax Leo to take his nap, her phone buzzed again. A text message from the same mysterious number. Eleanor stared at it, a knot tightening in her stomach. She opened it, her blood turning to ice as she read the precise, chilling instructions. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., Riverside Park, bench by the duck pond. Come alone with Leo, it's time you knew the truth. The sender knew her routine, knew her habits, knew that she often took Leo to Riverside Park, sitting on that specific bench by the duck pond. This wasn't a random act of kindness. It was an elaborate, calculated plan. This person had been watching her for a long time, meticulously piecing together the details of her life. She looked down at innocent Leo, now sleeping peacefully in her arms, his tiny chest rising and falling with soft breaths. He was central to this stranger's agenda, an unwitting pawn in a game Eleanor didn't understand. Could she gather the courage to meet them, to confront the architect of her terror and her salvation? Eleanor barely slept that night. Every creak of the old house, every distant car passing on the street, jarring her awake, her senses on high alert. Leo, usually a good sleeper, seemed to sense her palpable fear. He woke 3 times, whimpering, needing to be comforted, drawing Eleanor back into the present moment, back to the immediate needs of her grandson. By morning, exhausted and emotionally drained, she had made her decision. She wouldn't go. She would refuse to play into this stranger's elaborate scheme. It was too dangerous, too unpredictable. But as the day wore on, a desperate need for answers, for clarity, gnawed at her resolve. Who was this person? What did they want? And why her? The fear of the unknown, paradoxically, became a stronger force than the fear of the encounter itself. By noon, her decision had flipped. She would go. She had to. For Leo. At 2:45 p.m., her body tense, every muscle coiled, Eleanor began the walk to Riverside Park. Leo was strapped into his luxurious stroller, oblivious to the storm of emotions raging within his grandmother. Her eyes darted constantly, scanning every parked car, every passerby, searching for the black sedan with tinted windows, searching for any sign of her unseen observer. She reached their usual spot, the worn wooden bench by the duck pond. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the water, where ducks paddled lazily. Eleanor sat down, gripping the stroller handle, her knuckles white. She tried to appear calm, to blend into the mundane park scene. Children playing, couples strolling, old men feeding pigeons. But inside, her heart was a frantic drum, counting down the seconds until 3 p.m., until the truth, whatever it might be, finally revealed itself. The tension was almost unbearable. The minutes crawled by, each one stretching Eleanor's nerves thinner. The mundane sounds of the park did little to soothe her racing heart. If you're still with me, please like this story, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Suddenly, a shadow fell over the bench. Eleanor looked up, her breath catching in her throat. Standing before her was a man, older, probably in his late 60s, with a shock of silver hair neatly combed and kind, though weary, eyes magnified behind wire-rimmed glasses. He was dressed simply, in a clean, faded polo shirt and khakis, an ordinary man who looked anything but threatening. He raised his hand slightly, a gesture of surrender, his expression soft and apologetic. "Please don't be afraid," he said, his voice gentle, almost hesitant. "My name is Arthur Reed. I'm the one who's been sending the packages." Eleanor could only whisper, the single word heavy with all the fear, confusion, and gratitude that had been building inside her for weeks. "Why?" Arthur glanced at Leo, who was now stirring in his stroller, then back at Eleanor. "It's a long story," he said. "May I sit?" Despite the weeks of terror, the surveillance, the chilling notes, Eleanor found herself sensing no malice from this man. He looked almost as nervous as she felt. A profound sadness etched around his eyes. Her fear, while still present, was now tempered by a strange, compelling curiosity. She nodded, granting him permission to sit. Arthur eased onto the bench, maintaining a respectful distance, his hands resting on his knees. His gaze drifted to the duck pond, his eyes holding a deep, lingering sadness that seemed to precede his every word. He took a deep breath and began his story. 3 years ago, he started, his voice a low rumble, I lost my wife, Clara, pancreatic cancer. It was a 2-year battle, relentless and cruel. He paused, a flicker of pain crossing his face. We spent everything we had on her treatments, every last penny of our savings, trying to buy just a little more time. Eleanor listened, the pieces of a puzzle she hadn't even known existed slowly beginning to fall into place. Arthur continued, his voice softer now. Clara, she always regretted not having children. It was our one great sorrow. We tried for years, but it never happened. When she knew her time was coming, she made me promise something. She made me promise to use whatever was left. A small life insurance policy, what little we had left after the medical bills, to help families. Not through charities, not through big organizations, but in direct personal ways. To reach out to someone who truly needed it, someone struggling to give their child the best. After Clara's death, Arthur confessed he had been lost. The grief was a suffocating blanket, and the weight of her promise, though heartfelt, felt impossibly heavy. He had spent months simply existing, trying to make sense of a world without his Clara. Then, about 6 months ago, he had started. He'd learned a little about technology, about monitoring local area codes for specific keywords, for cries for help that might slip through the cracks. It's a bit of a unique system, he explained, a faint, almost embarrassed smile touching his lips. I set up a few prepaid phones with local area codes, linked to a simple program. The idea was to catch misdialed texts, desperate messages sent to the wrong number. I hoped to find someone, anyone, who just needed a helping hand, someone who felt truly alone. He looked directly at Eleanor, his kind eyes unwavering. Your text for the formula landed on one of those numbers. When I saw it, when I read your words, desperate, yes, but so full of love for your grandson, so willing to swallow your pride for him, it confirmed it. You were exactly what Clara wanted me to find, a warrior fighting for her little prince. Eleanor felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that this wasn't a predator, but a grieving man trying to honor his wife. And yet, the chilling reality of his surveillance remained. "So, you investigated me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, the question hanging in the air. Arthur nodded slowly, a deep sigh escaping his lips. "I had to, Eleanor. I couldn't just blindly send money. Clara's legacy, our savings. I needed to verify. To make sure you weren't a scammer, that your need was legitimate. I saw your gusts, your struggles, the weight you were carrying. And then Chloe, well, I saw how she left you with Leo, the promises she broke." He looked down at his hands, twisting them in his lap. "I am so truly sorry for watching you, for the photographs, for invading your privacy. But I needed to understand your situation, to know that I was truly helping the right person, in the way Clara would have wanted." Arthur's kind eyes darkened slightly as he recounted the truth of his findings. "I saw a woman, Eleanor, a grandmother in her 60s, working herself to exhaustion at 2 jobs just to keep a roof over her head, to put food on the table for an abandoned grandchild. I saw your heart, your selfless love for Leo, and your struggle." He reached down, his movements gentle, to retrieve a bright red rattle that Leo had dropped from his stroller. As he handed it back to the baby, he looked at Eleanor again, his voice firm. "You are a warrior, Eleanor, just like that first text said." His gaze lingered on Leo's face, a profound tenderness in his expression that softened the lines around his eyes. It was a look of aching longing, of something lost and deeply missed. And in that moment, Eleanor felt a strange, deep shift in her own chest, a connection forming with this grieving stranger. Arthur continued, his tone now tinged with a quiet indignation. "And then I saw the other side, Chloe and Mark. Their social media posts, carefully curated to show a life of luxury in Europe. Expensive restaurants, designer clothes, beautiful landmarks, all while you were diluting formula just to keep Leo fed." A wave of shame washed over Eleanor, hot and stinging, quickly followed by a cold, burning anger. To hear the blunt, unvarnished truth about her daughter's lavish, fabricated life, while Eleanor scraped by, denying herself basic necessities for her grandson, was a bitter pill to swallow. It confirmed her darkest suspicions, leaving her feeling betrayed on a scale she hadn't yet fully comprehended. "Clara would have cared deeply," Arthur said, his voice softer again, pulling Eleanor from her spiraling thoughts. "She always wanted to help, and in you, Eleanor, I saw so much of her strength, her refusal to give up, no matter the odds." He paused, taking a steadying breath. Eleanor, slowly processing the enormity of his revelation, finally found her voice again. "What do you want from us, Arthur? Why are you doing all of this?" Arthur met her gaze directly. "I want to help, Eleanor. No strings attached. I want to honor Clara's wish, to make a real difference for deserving family. And if you'd allow it, I'd like to be a part of your lives in whatever way you're comfortable with. Not as a benefactor, but as a friend perhaps. A grandfather figure to Leo, if you'd have me." Then he delivered the truly devastating blow, the truth that would shatter any lingering illusions Eleanor held about her daughter. "Eleanor," he said, his voice heavy with regret, "Chloe and Mark, they've been lying about everything." He explained it all in stark detail. Mark never had a job in Paris. Their entire business opportunity was a fabrication. They're living off a mountain of maxed-out credit cards, bouncing between cheap hostels, carefully staging photos to create the illusion of a glamorous life they don't have. Yeah, hey, the elaborate deceit, the cruel performance was almost unbelievable. "They abandoned Leo," Arthur continued, his voice firm, not because of a room, not because of corporate housing. They abandoned him because they couldn't handle parenthood. They were drowning in debt, overwhelmed by responsibility, and they took the opportunity to escape, using you as their unwitting caretaker. As he spoke, Arthur reached into a worn leather briefcase he'd placed beside him on the bench. He pulled out a thick manila envelope and handed it to Eleanor. "This contains everything, Eleanor. Financial records, social media evidence, bank statements, everything you need to see the truth for yourself." Eleanor took the envelope, her fingers trembling. The weight of it felt like the weight of her daughter's betrayal. She thanked Arthur, her voice hoarse, her mind reeling, and quickly excused herself, needing to be alone to process this shattering information. For the next 3 sleepless nights, Eleanor immersed herself in Arthur's meticulously gathered evidence. She saw the credit card statements showing exorbitant spending, the red flags of multiple overdue payments. She saw the carefully cropped social media photos, comparing them to satellite images Arthur had provided, revealing the cheap hostels and back alleys behind the supposedly glamorous backdrops. She saw the text message exchanges between Chloe and Mark, casual and dismissive, discussing Leo as an inconvenience rather than a child. Each document, each photograph, each damning piece of evidence was a fresh stab to her heart, confirming the depth and cruelty of her daughter's betrayal. It was undeniable. Chloe had abandoned Leo. On the fourth day, as Eleanor sat in her quiet living room, the envelope spread open on the coffee table, her phone rang. It was Arthur. Eleanor, her mind a whirlwind of anger, grief, and a strange new resolve, knew she needed to talk to him. She invited him to her apartment. Arthur arrived a short while later, looking less formal than at the park, holding a small bouquet of white daisies. Eleanor opened the door, her heart a mixture of trepidation and anticipation. As soon as he stepped inside, Leo, who had been playing on the floor, immediately crawled towards him, his small hands reaching up. With surprising strength, Leo pulled himself up on Arthur's legs, a wide, gummy smile spreading across his face, as if recognizing a comforting presence. Arthur, for his part, knelt down, his face breaking into a genuine, heartfelt smile, and gently scooped the baby into his arms. Eleanor watched, a warmth spreading through her chest, as Arthur's face lit up with genuine, unadulterated joy. Leo, now in Arthur's arms, grabbed one of his fingers, his tiny fist wrapping around it with surprising strength. The last vestiges of Eleanor's anxiety began to dissolve, replaced by a profound sense of peace. There was no malice here, no hidden agenda, only a gentle soul radiating kindness. Clara and I, Arthur began, his voice wistful. We tried for children for 15 years, desperately, but it just never happened for us. He looked at Leo, then back at Eleanor, a soft smile playing on his lips. Clara always believed that everything happens for a reason. Maybe our love, our dreams for a family were simply meant for a different time, a different child. His gaze settled on Leo, then on Eleanor, a silent question in his eyes. Eleanor, sensing something deeper than mere charity in his words, something more profound than simple friendship, carefully asked, Arthur, what exactly are you proposing? He gently stroked Leo's hair, his eyes shining. I don't want you to be alone anymore, Eleanor. Leo needs a grandfather figure in his life, someone consistent, someone who adores him. And I need purpose again. I need a family, a reason to get up in the morning. He looked at her, his expression earnest. You, Eleanor, you need someone who truly recognizes your strength, your sacrifice, someone to help you carry these burdens, to stand by your side. Tears, hot and unexpected, welled in Eleanor's eyes. For months, years even, she had felt invisible, her struggles unacknowledged, her strength taken for granted. To hear someone not only see her, but value her was an overwhelming, cathartic release. Just then her phone rang, startling them both. Eleanor glanced at the screen. Chloe. Her heart clenched, a fresh wave of anger and disappointment rising. Arthur, sensing her hesitation, nodded quietly. Answer it, Eleanor. It's time you heard what Chloe has to say. Eleanor took a deep breath, her fingers still shaking slightly, and answered the call. Chloe's voice, usually bright and cheerful, was strained, edged with a frantic desperation. Mom, oh, thank goodness you answered. Look, I really need your help. We're in a bit of a bind. I need to borrow $3,000. Our credit cards are maxed, rent is due, and we absolutely have to get plane tickets home for Christmas. Eleanor's grip tightened on the phone. Her voice, when it came, was stronger, clearer than it had been in months. Chloe, she began, cutting through her daughter's hurried explanation. Do you intend to take Leo back? A beat of silence stretched between them, then Chloe's nervous, dismissive laugh. Oh, Mom, you know he's better off with you. He's so happy. You're doing such a great job. He should just stay put. The words, so casually uttered, struck a nerve. Eleanor felt a surge of cold fury. Don't you dare, Chloe. Don't you dare try to twist this into some noble act of mine. You abandoned your son. You lied to me, to everyone, about your so-called business opportunity while pretending to live a lavish life. Do you have any idea what I've been through trying to keep Leo fed, trying to keep a roof over our heads, while you swan around Europe on maxed-out credit cards? Chloe's feigned composure shattered. Mom, what are you talking about? How do you know about— Eleanor cut her off, her voice firm, unwavering. I know everything, Chloe. Every lie, every debt, every staged social media post. I know you left Leo because you couldn't handle parenthood, not because of some fantasy job. So this is it, Chloe. You have a choice. Be Leo's mother, truly be his mother, or you legally sign over guardianship. I will not be your permanent safety net, your convenient babysitter, while you play at being a jet setter. Chloe erupted into sobs on the other end of the line. Mom, please, just give me some time to think. This is too much. You've had 9 months to think, Chloe, Eleanor stated, her voice devoid of emotion. 9 months, the clock is ticking. Without waiting for another word, Eleanor pressed the end call button, the finality of the click echoing in the sudden silence of the room. She looked up at Arthur, her chest heaving, a mix of exhaustion and exhilarating triumph washing over her. Arthur's face was filled with admiration. That was incredible, Eleanor. Truly brave. He then took a deep breath, his kind eyes searching hers, the wistful sadness returning. Eleanor, he said, his voice softer, more hesitant now. Will you consider not being alone anymore? He reached out, taking her hand, his touch warm and steady. I'm asking you to consider a life together, to build a new family, with me and with Leo. In that exact moment, as the words hung in the air, weighted with hope and possibility, Leo, still in Arthur's arms, suddenly pushed off. He swayed precariously, took 1, 2, then 3 unsteady steps across the wooden floor, his small legs pumping with effort. He lurched forward, his arms outstretched toward Arthur, then collapsed in a delighted heap at Arthur's feet, a triumphant giggle bubbling from his lips. Arthur immediately scooped him up, both of them laughing as Eleanor watched, her heart bursting with a profound and unexpected joy. 6 months later, the world had transformed. Eleanor sat on her porch swing, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves of the old oak tree in her backyard, watching Arthur push 14-month-old Leo on the sturdy wooden swing set he had built. Leo's infectious giggles filled the air, a sound Eleanor had come to cherish above all else. Mama! Papa! Leo shrieked, pointing a chubby finger at Arthur, then at Eleanor, a term of endearment that melted her heart every single time. Chloe had, as promised, signed the temporary guardianship papers. She had called only once since that decisive conversation, her voice subdued, offering a vague apology that lacked any real depth of remorse. Eleanor held no expectations for her daughter, finding a quiet peace in the distance. Her focus was now entirely on the vibrant, joyful life unfolding before her. Arthur had proposed in February, as simply and genuinely as he did everything else. He had placed a small velvet box beside her coffee cup one crisp morning, his eyes warm and sincere. I found my family, Eleanor, he had said, his voice thick with emotion. Will you be my wife? Eleanor, without a moment's hesitation, had said yes. They married in a small, intimate ceremony at the courthouse with Leo, dressed in a tiny blue suit, as their sole giggling witness. Judge Thompson, a kind-faced woman who had presided over countless unions, had smiled knowingly, remarking on the genuine happiness radiating from their small, unconventional family. The neighborhood, which had once buzzed with whispers and suspicion, now embraced them with genuine warmth. Lee texted Eleanor often, expressing her joy for their new family and regularly inviting them over for dinner, a friendship forged in unexpected circumstances. Even Mrs. Albright offered a shy, sincere congratulations, the old animosity replaced by a quiet acceptance. Mama! Leo's voice pulled Eleanor from her reverie. He pointed a small finger at a monarch butterfly fluttering past, his eyes wide with wonder, then toddled on unsteady legs toward Eleanor, collapsing into her outstretched arms for a warm, comforting hug. Later, as they sat together watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, Eleanor leaned her head on Arthur's shoulder. Arthur, she mused, her voice soft. Is this too good to be true? Arthur gently squeezed her hand. Clara used to say that miracles aren't about something impossible happening, Eleanor. They're just about getting exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. He smiled, his eyes twinkling. I think we both got our miracle. Eleanor reflected on her life before Arthur, a constant struggle to simply survive. Now she woke each morning with a heart full of gratitude, not just for the shared milestones of Leo's rapid development, but for having someone to grow old with, someone to share the quiet moments and the profound joys. Just as the last vestiges of light faded from the sky, Arthur spoke again, his voice filled with a quiet excitement. My lawyer called today, Eleanor, about making this permanent, with Leo. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. She knew exactly what he meant. He wants to legally adopt Leo, to give him our name, to ensure his security, to make him our son. Tears pricked Eleanor's eyes, a fresh wave of emotion washing over her. Yes, she whispered, the word escaping on a shaky breath. Oh yes, Arthur, more than anything. She realized then, with a profound clarity, how deeply she desired this complete, undeniable belonging for Leo and for herself. The phone rang, jarring them from their tender moment. Eleanor looked at the screen. Chloe, again. Arthur gently squeezed her hand. Answer it, he encouraged, his voice calm. We'll face it together. Eleanor took a deep breath, her heart steady, and answered. Chloe's voice was quieter this time, tinged with a maturity Eleanor hadn't heard before. Mom, Chloe began, I just wanted to apologize properly. Mark and I are back. We're working, honest jobs. We've learned a lot. Eleanor listened, a surprising sense of hope blooming in her chest. Chloe, she said, her voice firm but not unkind, you can have supervised visits with Leo, of course, but you need to understand, Arthur and I are adopting him. We are his parents now. You cannot disrupt his stability again. Chloe was quiet for a long moment, then a soft sob escaped her lips. I understand, Mom, truly. You and Arthur, you're the parents Leo deserves. I wasn't ready. I know that now. Eleanor hung up the phone, a profound sense of peace settling over her. Chloe's words, sincere and heartbroken, signaled a new understanding, a glimmer of growth. It wasn't the daughter she had always dreamed of, but it was a step towards a healthier truth. Arthur wrapped his arm around Eleanor, pulling her close as they watched their son, now peacefully asleep in his crib. Love, Arthur murmured, is a daily choice, choosing each other every single day. Eleanor understood. Their love story wasn't about grand romance or dramatic gestures, but about finding each other exactly when they needed it most. It was the story of a warrior, not fighting alone anymore, but sharing her victory, her peace, with the family she had found. Leo stirred, opened his eyes for a moment, and smiled, a soft, sleepy whisper escaping his lips. Mama, Papa. Then he drifted back to sleep. Eleanor looked at Arthur, and in their shared gaze she knew they were home.